Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly settle down, please. The speaker will be joining any moment. In the meanwhile, I thought I'll take, I'm starting before time, 2, 3 minutes, so that I'll quickly tell you what's happening in MMA so that you don't miss them. The next event is happening on the 7th of Feb, our competition for young managers. Then thereafter, we have on the same day, we have a discussion on the book, Play to Potential, Lead a Full Life to Become the Best in You. And we got Deepak Jayaraman, one of the great corporate leader. He will be there and he'll be in conversation with Mama Balakrishnan, Senior Vice President Finance from Sundaram Finance, and also Satya Sriram, Independent Advisor. This is happening at the same time at MMA Auditorium. Then our annual convention, 12th of Feb at Hotel Taj Coromandel, Foundation for Building a Resilient India. As I mentioned, we have over 450 nominations already. We can make some, take another 100 more. If any of the individual members, we want our individual members to, because it's highly subsidized, as against 6,000 rupees what we incur, we are charging only rupees 2,500. If you're there, quickly get your registration done. I think my team is in touch with you. We wanted our members to take advantage of all the concessions what we give. Once you're not there, we are going to open it to public and so that it will get filled right away. We are seeing the galaxy of outstanding speakers who are going to be talking. More than 24 of them will be talking at the convention. Then on 14th, we have again Trump 2.0. What does it mean for India and the world? We have again outstanding speaker from USA. Mr. Gopal Ratnam is a technology policy writer, editor of Washington, D.C., USA, senior staff writer for CQ roles, and also traveled extensively with many of the Secretary of the State, worked with two President Joe Biden and Bill Clinton. He's going to be, he's on a visit to Chennai. As we requested him, he's agreed to talk. He'll be in conversation with Air Marshal Matheshwaran and Mr. K. Kumar, partner Deloitte. Then on 18th of Feb, we have a book reading as usual, another interesting book, The Principles and Practice of Coaching and Leadership. Again, Sangeeta will be leading the conversation. Then again on 28th, we have an outstanding event discussion on the book Coach Your Leaders, a roadmap to the organizations. Ganesh Chella is author. He'll be there along with Ajay Soni. Ajay Soni, the Chief Learning Officer from Aditya Birla Group, Mumbai. And Archana Edward Madhavan will be the other co-speaker. Is happening. And this program is very interesting in the sense we are also having a live demo how to do actual coaching. Right? How to join, how to do actual coaching will be a live demo on the stage. Will be interesting. Then we have our women conventions happening on 15th of March. We lined up number of events till 31st March, and I thought I'd give you a few examples of what's happening. And today's event, Ponce veteran V Narayanan Memorial Endowment Lecture is instituted by the Ponce veterans, well-wishers of Narayanan. Narayanan is a person with whom I not worked, but I heard so much the reverence what the Ponce veteran showed him. Is one of the outstanding corporate leader. But I heard so much about him, what he has done on different areas. Is there, and we are waiting for two speakers to log in, one from USA, one from Santom. I think they'll be logging any moment now. The moment we come, we'll commence the program. And But in the meanwhile, I can request our distinguished guests for this evening to take their place on the dais. Let me warmly request Mr. Mahalingam, President Madras Management Association, Mr. Ravi Shankar, who is going to be delivering as our Ponds veteran, and the speaker for this evening from Chennai in person is Mr. Atul Vohra, advisor, professor, brand ambassador. He's going to lead the conversation with the Ravi Shankar. May I request you to please take your place on the dais so that by the time they log in, we won't waste any time, sir. Mali, no, yes. Yeah, both. Mr. Balraman will be joining any moment. In the meanwhile, I request Mr. Mahalingam to deliver the formal vote of thanks. And Mr. Mali, popularly known as Mahalingam, popularly known as Mali, is the president of Madras Management Association, the partner and director of TSM Group of Companies, over 35 years leadership experience, and alumnus of NIT Trichy. And I am Calcutta. He's transformed TSM Group into one of the leading brands and diversified into financial services, real estate, angel investing, and much more. Ms. Mali is actually involved in mentoring and also supports entrepreneurs through Chennai Angel Affairs. Now, I request Mr. Mali to please deliver the formal welcome address. Mr. Mali.
Good evening, everybody. Nice, pleasant evening in Chennai, and even more pleasant task of delivering the welcome address at the V Narayanan Fifth V Narayanan Memorial Endowment Lecture. Let me start by saying it's indeed a privilege and honor for Madras Management Association to host the V Narayanan Ponds Endowment Lecture instituted by Ponds veterans. Before I deliver the formal welcome address this evening, on behalf of members of the Madras Management Association and Ponds veterans, I would like to offer a floral tribute. Are we doing this, Vijay Kumar? Vijay Kumar, are we doing a floral tribute? Floral tribute, are we doing? Would look like to Mr. Sri Narayanan. Floral tribute.
Yeah, we do that actually. Yeah. Let's say AV.
Have the AV. Yeah. May I have the AV, please? Thank you. That was a wonderful virtual forward tribute. Thank you. I'm fortunate as the president of the Madras Management Association to deliver the formal welcome address this evening at this very special event, the fifth V Narayanan Ponds Memorial Endowment Lecture, organized by MMA in association with Ponds veterans in memory of the great visionary and business leader par excellence, late Shri V Narayanan. I consider it an honor to welcome this evening Mr. V. Balraman, I think he's joining us online, Mr. Ravi Shankar, Mr. Atul Vohra, and Mr. Ramesh Srinivasan, Senior Partner McKinsey Company, New York, who has joined us also online from the USA. Thank you, Mr. Ravi Shankar. Thank you, Mr. Atul Vohra. And thank you, Mr. Ramesh Srinivasan. Of course, thanks to Mr. Balraman for joining us. Joining us, I think, is instrumental, along with Mr. Ravi Shankar and other Pond veterans, to put this together. Actually, I would consider them co-hosts of this program. I take this opportunity to welcome the Ponds veterans who have made this event possible and joined us in person and online, invitees from other organizations, guests and members of MMA from all over Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry, who have joined us this evening, and all the viewers who have joined us online from various parts of the world. To give you some perspective, this initiative, which on doing it online, which started with COVID, has gathered a lot of momentum for us. And anywhere between, we have had up to 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people watching it online and watching it after the event as well. So a few words on the Madras Management Association, founded in 1956, 8,000 members, 10 chapters, and 14 years in a row, best management association in the country by All India Management Association. Leaders like Mr. Narayanan inspire awe. For my generation of professionals, when we passed out of business schools in the 80s and 90s, Ponds was a name which was synonymous with Mr. Narayanan and Mr. Balraman and all the rest. And Mr. Narayanan, for us, when we were in business school, were the kind of people who used to look at photographs in business magazines of those days. Inspired awe and inspiration in all of us. And it's really, I'm really honored to be doing this today. For stories of such as Mr. Narayanan, I think Ponds, if I remember right, was one of the most respected professionally run companies in Chennai those days. A multinational out of Chennai, run by professionals, was rare those days, basically, because Chennai traditionally had a lot of family businesses. And Ponds was an exception. I can tell you, sir, that my association had some personal connections with Ponds in two different ways. One is Ponds was the most cherished job on campus in our business school that day. And they used to, in Calcutta, they used to select 2 people. And they had a great cutoff, and I was nowhere near the cutoff. Basically. And they used to hire people who had do internships and then get jobs. I didn't qualify the internship as well. The positive side to that was when I passed out and got into my business, I remember 3 or 4 Ponds employees of those days, we are in the car business, who bought a car from us. I remember names like K. Anand, Jagdish Rao, and Ashwini Jain. I think all of them worked with Ponds, and they were my customers. So I have fond memories of Ponds and not so fond memories of Ponds also, not getting into Ponds anyway. It was aspiration which I never met. But that was the value Ponds had. I think they were the most eligible bachelors those days, the Ponds employees of those days. So for me, it is really a lot of nostalgia and passion with which I'm doing this. And we're delighted to have Mr. Balraman, who succeeded Mr. Narayanan as Managing Director of Ponds India and took it to greater heights. And I must say this, I'm sure he's listening into it. Mr. Balraman himself has said he bought his first vehicle from us. So, okay. So a lot of personal connect with Mr. Balraman. And as past president of MMA, his contribution to Madras Management Association is fantastic. And he really took the Madras Management Association to the next level. We can't thank Mr. Balraman enough for putting this together for us and for doing what he did for MMA. Thank you, sir. There are many ways of celebrating legacies and memories, and people build monuments, people build statues, people who name events after them. But I don't think there's any better way of celebrating a legacy than sharing the great intellect, the thoughts, leadership lessons, and leadership practices which were world-class in those days and are world-class even today. By sharing those through people who worked with him, and many of them I know have achieved multiple heights in multiple sectors they were. And this series puts together the sharing of the best practice of management leadership thoughts through the series of, there's the 5th series of lectures we're doing, 5th in the series of lectures doing. I think that is the best way to celebrate the legacy of somebody like Mr. Narayanan. And I think we should thank the Ponds veterans for thinking of this idea, and most importantly, doing it with the Madras Management Association. Thank you so much to the Ponds veterans, again, many of you here, for doing this. I think we really owe it to you, and I think the members of the Madras Management Association and our people who are attending this and watching it online have benefited immensely, and this will continue to benefit. Thank you once more. I'm sure today's session will be immensely beneficial to all members and budding leaders from industry, particularly reference from the book, which is hailed in the media as the first ever explanation of McKinsey's step-by-step approach to transforming leaders both personally and professionally, including revealing lessons from its legendary CEO leadership program. I think we're very fortunate to hear about this today. The Vohra Forum, which has counseled more than 500 global CEOs for the 5 days. I think we will be listening to that from Mr. Ramesh. Again, once more, I thank all the Ponds veterans for doing this for us. I wish to welcome the committee members of the Madras Management, past presidents and past members of the management committee, and all of you who have joined here in person and watching it online. Thank you again to the Ponds veterans for doing this with us. A warm welcome to all of you. I'm sure all of us will have an inspiring and very, very enriching evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mali, and the distinguished speaker from USA will be joining any moment. We always have Indian Standard Time and Northern Time, Western Time, Eastern Time, so many times in USA. got confused. Maybe calendar invite we are sent, and he'll be joining any moment. Not to worry. Mr. Balraman will also be joining us any moment. As he joins, sir, Balraman will be joining us again. He'll be joining us for the Indian Standard Time only today. And meanwhile, I think we won't waste time. We also have the opportunity to launch the book today at the book author by Ramesh. May I request the dignity, please step forward, do the honor of launching the book officially. Maybe Raghavendra Ravi, I also tell you to please join on stage. Please come. Raghu, you can also join me on the stage to launch the book. Can I get the book, please? Yeah. Please step forward. So, yeah, come to us. No. Come to center. Come to the mic. We'll keep it for you. Don't take it and go. You guys can keep it at 2. I have one already. Next one. Mr. Balraman, you join? Good evening, Mr. Ramesh. Welcome. Hi, sir. Good evening. Welcome. This is Group Captain Vijay Kumar.
Good evening. Lovely to see you.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for joining us. And now, before we move forward, we just formally launched the book with all the dignities here. Maybe if you have a copy of the book, you can show it on the screen. We'll capture that. It will also become part of our launch in Chennai. Would you like to do that, sir? If you have a copy of the book, you can show it on the screen. And meanwhile, I'll also request the dignitaries to come on to show the book again, sir.
Okay.
Please,
Ramesh,
we'll do action replay.
Is the mic live?
Yes, yes.
So Ramesh, we are doing this in honor of this great book and the person behind this book, you.
Thank you very much for doing that. I have my copy here behind me, so hopefully you can see that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. And before I call upon Mr. Atul to lead the conference, Ramesh, can I hear the AV of yeah, Mr. Balraman joined. Good evening, Mr. Balraman. Able to hear me? Mr. Balraman? Good evening, Mr. Balraman. I think you have
Good evening, Vijay. Can you hear me?
you have to put on your camera, sir. Otherwise, let me briefly introduce you. Then I will request you to give the opening remarks on this occasion. You all know Mr. Balraman, past president of MMA and former managing director of Funds India Limited, and is a boardroom advantage offering brand marketing consultancy, coaching, leadership, mentorship, a former MD and CEO of Funds. And I now request Mr. Balraman to deliver the opening remarks. Mr. Balraman is responsible for instituting this Funds veteran memorial lecture. Not only that, he is the one person who has been twice the president of Madras Management Association and a great supporter of MMA, and is a great mentor. He's also a guide. So under his dynamic leadership and guidance, we could do so many things in MMA thanks to Mr. Balraman. Over to Mr. Balraman to deliver the opening remarks.
Thank you, Vijay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's of course my privilege and pleasure to introduce the V Narayanan Memorial Series once again to all of you. V Narayanan was the Chief Executive and Managing Director of Pons India Limited, and I worked under him for several years and learned a lot. Mr. Narayanan's strength was not that he was a great manager, but a fantastic leader. When it comes to leadership, Mr. Narayanan typifies what a person ought to be. A leader is one who not only forms a team, but also takes the team to its goal. He makes sure that everybody's strength is identified and encouraged and used well towards achieving the team's common purpose. Mr. Narayanan typified what a good leader should be. and he brought out the best in people. He always looked at the strength and opportunity. He never looked at the weakness of a person. That a person did something wrong or failed in something was not material to him. What was material to him is where a person succeeded. What did he do well that others could not do is what he looked at. Mr. Narayanan is a rare kind of leader. And what we need in business and life are leaders, more and more of them. And so leadership is a very important subject to study, encourage, and support for development. So leadership is the subject, and I'm very, very happy to talk about Mr. Narayanan in that context. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balraman. I know we are missing you today. I'm quite sure we'll catch up soon with you. And now we all come to the most awaited part of this evening. And Mr. Atul Vohra in conversation with Mr. Ramesh Srinivasan. Now, before I call upon distinguished speakers, may I the AV of the distinguished speakers, please.
Mr. Ramesh Srinivasan is a senior partner at McKinsey and Company, specializing in organizational transformation, leadership development, and merger management across high-tech, healthcare, banking, and industrial sectors. Mr. Ramesh is the Dean of McKinsey's Bauer Forum and co-author of the Journey of Leadership. With over 25 years of experience, he has led strategic initiatives balancing performance and cultural transformation. A gold medalist from IIM Ahmedabad and an IIT Madras graduate, Mr. Ramesh is also a trustee of Akanksha and advisor to Teach for India. Is a seasoned leader with over 25 years of experience across Fortune 50, mid-cap, and private equity-backed companies in consumer and B2B technology. He has driven growth in global markets, led successful public exits, and built enduring brands. Mr. Atul, as a former regional managing director and CMO at Solida, spearheaded air-driven digital transformation. He has also held key roles at Majesco, their Outback Systems, and Citi. Currently, Mr. Atul advises SaaS firms, teaches global strategy at SMU, and actively engages in community initiatives.
That's a profile of outstanding speakers for this evening. I will now request Mr. Ravi Shankar, from a partner UI and also founder of Connect to Expert, to formally say a few more words about the speaker and the event this evening. Mr. Ravi Shankar, also a Quant veteran and is a chartered accountant, and his leadership roles in Hindustan Lever, Unilever, London, and passionate about solving complex business issues. Mr. Ravi.
A warm welcome to all of you today evening. I think my job has been made simpler by this audio visual, and I think you have seen two stalwarts on the screen and introduced by MMA. But I thought I would like to personally introduce and say a few more words about them. What I understood from Atul was Ramesh, he is a Chennaiite and he's from IIT Madras, and in the batch of 1988-92. Little more details I would like to give so that we get the flavor of his academic achievements. Thereafter, he moved to IIM Ahmedabad, and he in 92-94 batch, and he excelled there as a gold medalist in the 94 batch. That is a great milestone for him. One of the unique things which I noticed with him is that for the last 30 years, he has not changed a job. And he has been a person with McKinsey. He has grown up from the ranks And McKinsey has been so lucky to have him for 30 years plus now. So that's to his credit. And we are lucky to have Ramesh today, thanks to Atul. Um, Ramesh heads healthcare and organizational practices. I personally come from consulting background. I know the kind of the person who he must support in 30 years or so. He must have handled at least 300 to 4,400 clients in each one of these verticals and domain. So, which rich treasure house of knowledge was given in a platter by Atul to us today evening. Thanks, Atul. Now, Atul, both me and Atul joined in the brand room of Ponds, and I was managing a small building brand, but he was the main stalwart in the brand room along with MS Narayan and a few others. A few of us Ponds veterans present here today, thank you all. And we all have worked together and built the Ponds institution, which is basically a cradle of innovation and also entrepreneurship. Each one of the people who came out of Ponds have managed independent businesses and have gone to a global leader. So that is one of the significant platform provided by Mr. V Narayanan to all of us. After moving from Ponds, he joined the financial services industry, banking and financial services industry. In fact, I remember that he called me one night. I said, Ravi, I'm going to go to diners. So what? From FMCG to diners, but he made a great career in city, in various countries, started in Delhi, then went to Hungary as a head of city Hungary, then moved to Greece, all exotic locations. In fact, I personally met him in Hungary in his, and then he moved on to New York. He had a very successful career in financial services industry, so he has got enormous knowledge and strength in banking and financial strength. Then he moved on to IT services. IT services, then he moved to create brands like Majesco and also Dell. He was heading the marketing function there. And so it was a fantastic move from him, from financial services to IT. And from IT, he moved on to software as a service. That is in Solera. Solera is a leading automobile software platform which tracks various automobile health. So that is an interesting challenge, and he transformed that organization, integrated 50 companies into a single holding company, and created a very strong brand. So that taken a little time to elaborate what kind of people we are talking today. And thanks to them, I think today we are going to see yet another successful VN Memorial Lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ravi. And before I call upon Mr. Atul to lead the conversation with the distinguished chief guest for this evening, all the viewers watching this program, as usual, if you have a question. Today, we also have ICT Academy members joined us as a collaborative partner, watching this live from all over India. I think we expect a couple of thousands of them to watch this program. If you have any question, the number is shared on the screen. You can send the questions. Now, I request Mr. Atul Vohra to lead the conversation with our distinguished chief guest for this evening, Mr. Ramesh. Over to Mr. Atul.
Thank you. Do you want me to go to the lectern or here, wherever the audio is better? I just want to make sure.
Audio will be better from here. Yeah. Just try to.
From here?
So it's easy for the cameraman.
Okay, perfect. Can you hear me? The audio is good?
Yes.
No, I prefer not to use the mic because I want to, this is a real intimate fireside conversation.
So we need a mic to come here because it's going audio live.
I think that may be better.
Fine.
So everyone can hear me clearly? Yeah, it's more important to hear Ramesh, but I want to be the one teeing it off and asking him questions. Ramesh, thank you, first of all, for making the time. And I apologize to our viewers. There seems to have been some goof up. Unlike some of our political personalities, I will not pass the buck and say the problem must have been at my end with the time zones. But regardless, we are on here and we are not going to let Ramesh go till we've answered all the questions. And Ramesh, I did read the book cover to cover more than once. It's dog marked and bookmarked. But I want to start by saying the reason I think this is an intimate conversation. I only met Ramesh 6 months ago. We had a lovely coffee, but it was like we were kindred souls meeting. And right at that time, I figured here is a person who belonged to Ponds. I think we need to settle some scores with McKinsey for stealing him away, although by then Ponds had become levers. So due apologies to all the levers people. I think some of our mojo was diluted. But Ramesh has obviously the academic brilliance to be part of the Ponds galaxy. And we had many, many gold medalists from IIM Ahmedabad. I was not one of them. But we had many people like Ramesh. But more than that, it's his human traits. And I can't tell you enough to say that I have not met someone as positive, as human-centric as Ramesh. And it didn't take me more than, the hour we spent together and the car ride we had to discover how much we share and how we think alike. But before I get maudlin and go into the human side of it, I want to say also that V Narayanan, our cherished and dear guru, really belonged to the pages of this book. And if this book were written when he was alive, I have no doubt in my mind that many of the stories, like the stories you talk about Moderna or the stories of Anu Patwardhan, V Narayanan would have been right there, because I feel like we together need to write a book about things we have witnessed, leadership that we have witnessed. I have so many examples, and I'm going to stop in a moment, of his humility and his confidence, and how the yin and yang work so well together, of his empathy and instilling empathy within all of us, but still empowering us to do what we needed to do. Empathy didn't mean that he was looking over our shoulders. It just meant that he trusted us and let us be. So I think there's a lot that he would have been able to contribute here. But I'm going to close with one thing, and then I'm going to turn to Ramesh. And that was when I think of, and you talk about this, Ramesh, a lot about embedding purpose. He embedded purpose, but the purpose, remember, this was 1979. We were in the middle of life. We were at the time in India's evolution when we frankly didn't have that confidence. This Made in India movement hadn't begun, but he had that. And while we didn't say it in so many words, what it reminds me of is the motto that stands above my daughter's college, which says, for God, for country, and for Yale. In our case, it would have been for God, for India, and for every individual in Ponds, India. And that's what he was. He was a man who led by faith. When Mr. Balraman and I talked yesterday, we were saying he led with hope, and Balram corrected me and said, with faith. And I think that's what it was. So without further ado, Ramesh, I want to ask you to take the mic and talk to us about, first and foremost, why did you write this book? And then we've got a series of questions I want to ask you, but take it away.
Thank you, Atul. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Firstly, again, apologies for any confusion on time zones, etc. I'm glad we're up and running. Very, very excited and very honored to be here. Thank you. The more I hear about Mr. Narayanan, I wish I had known him better. I have heard about him, and just FYI, while I've spent more than 30 years at McKinsey, the only other institution that I did spend a summer at was Hindustan Lever, where I spent a few months, and then, like you said, for good or for worse, chose McKinsey over Hindustan Lever. But I've had a lot of respect both for Ponds growing up in Chennai, and then also Hindustan Lever as I went through a business school and beyond. So very honored to be having this conversation. The idea of this book started about 3 years ago. I'm the dean of our McKinsey's Bauer Forum, and we were getting to a point where we knew we would have more than 500 CEOs who would have gone through the Bauer Forum. And now we've had more than 600, but 3 years ago, we could see the trajectory. And we felt like we had a data set from which we could extract learnings and share those learnings with the world. Part of our objective here was to democratize the Bauer Forum itself. We've shared a lot about the process that we use. We've shared the stories of a small set of leaders who've gone through the Bauer Forum and leaders that we've observed. I've observed over the last 30 years, my colleagues have observed over the last several decades. And we've also extracted a set of what we call micro practices. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And a set of questions that can help leaders on their own journey. And leaders meaning not just CEOs or senior leaders, but really leaders across the whole spectrum who are thinking about leadership. I loved Mr. Balraman's framing already of manager versus leader. He was setting that up in his introductory remarks. And we felt, why not share these ideas on how leaders can invest in their own development, grow, and learn. Mahatma Gandhi had said, live every day like it's your last, and learn every day like you live forever. So it was really that learning orientation that inspired us to write the book and bring the ideas to the world, Atul.
So when and that's fantastic to democratize, what you said, democratize leadership and learning, and I think that's a really great purpose. My question to you though is, what is it about human-centric leadership? And I know it's the whole book that sets it apart, because if anyone is interested and you go to Amazon and type in the word leadership, I did this. There are only about 57,000 and change books or, books basically that come up with a leadership title in them, leadership word in the title. So writing another one is a very brave venture. And kudos to you for doing that and doing it so well and making it to several best-selling lists. But what is it about human-centric leadership that sets it apart from these 57,000 other books?
Yeah, our big idea here is this concept of human-centric leadership, as you said. What we saw is in today's day and age, with all the geopolitics that are constantly changing and changing faster, you have technology that is disrupting at least the business world, but also even beyond that, our day-to-day lives. Climate change is real and here to stay. So in this context, the idea that a leader has answers to all the problems that are happening in the world, we felt is no longer relevant. And so we thought what is important is for a leader to be able to ask questions. On the one hand, a leader still needs to have set a sense of purpose, a vision, a direction that can be useful to the organization. But at the same time, be open to asking the tough questions. What am I not clear about today? Being humble, which is, our chapter 1 is, you're not the smartest person in the room. Be able to assemble, use their sense of purpose to inspire teams and inspire institutions. So our thesis is, you cannot walk around today just telling people what to do. You need to come in with a deep sense of your own purpose and use that to inspire teams and inspire institutions. So that's what we are calling inside out leadership. So inside is, and half the book is on the inner journey. What is my purpose? Who am I? What gives me energy? And half the book is on using that clarity to inspire teams and inspire change in the world. And so that's the idea that we wanted to bring to the world. And that's the idea we saw in all these Bauer forums and the 600 leaders that we had the good fortune to observe and watch over the last 15 years, Atul.
So just let's dig into this whole, purpose and inspiration, because this is what we saw in ponds, as I said, in droves, and Balram referred to it as well. I've got to paint the picture a little bit. I know you were in India at that time, but perhaps not quite, because in the sense you were a younger, student in the years when cosmetics was deemed to be a luxury good, heavily taxed. We had growth objectives, but frankly, the way to grow was not very clear. And Mr. Narayanan had this uncanny ability to look beyond, look around corners and think about a world where India and Indians and ponds could be hugely successful. And he, as I said, instilled empathy in us, and I'll talk a little bit about maybe it's a good point to have a standard, the standard operating procedure was when we went out to meet a salesperson and we came back, if we ran into you in the hallways, the first question would be, how is so-and-so's son doing now? So if you hadn't picked that up when you went, to this on the sales visit, you would show up poorly. That's the level of empathy. The CEO of a company knowing every salesperson's family as deeply as he did. But the inspiration and the empowerment was he realized that the way to growth was to build these brands, but we would have to build multiple businesses. And there are several of us in the room that actually came up with ideas or found ideas as we traveled and were empowered to run with them. And, Balraman built the biggest of them, the leather business. But I remember really well, I was sent on a trip to Cheesebro Ponds and met with Bill Schmidt, who was our R&D leader at the other end. And he took me out for dinner and we're eating a Mexican meal and says, the mushrooms in this are grown in a factory situation. Do you think you could do that in India? And I said, I have no idea. I thought mushrooms were farms. So no, let's get on a plane tomorrow morning. And we flew to Temple, Pennsylvania, Reading, Pennsylvania, drove to Temple, saw this mushroom farm. And about a year later, we were in mushroom production for one of the food units of Cheesebro Ponds. That's the level of inspiration, empowerment. We were all, and there's a colleague of mine who did the same with the thermometer business, glass and mercury thermometers, with leather, as I said, and maybe Balraman can talk about that. But the whole idea was we did exports to Russia and the Soviet Union. And the whole idea here was find the opportunities, grow those opportunities, and use those surplus funds to build the businesses. So there was a clear purpose in this, and that purpose was make India strong, as I said, for God, for country, and for the institution. So when you hear of that, and you've met these 600 CEOs and more, does that, as I said, belong to the pages of your book? Does that kind of resonate with what you've seen?
It definitely resonates. This idea of, I think one of you mentioned the point, yin and yang, or, we call it managing polarities in the book. What we saw in the leaders that we studied was this ability to, on the one hand, be humble and ask the tough questions, questions for which I don't have answers at this point. At the same time, be able to then set audacious goals, pursue opportunities that otherwise might feel very, very hard to pursue. So, or as you called it, being very empathetic and being demanding and setting expectations for people. So we saw in these leaders this incredible ability to manage polarities that we have called out. You mentioned Stefan Bansal of Moderna, as he was going through the pandemic, and they had the idea that they could produce the vaccine back in 2020, in the first quarter of 2020. On the one hand, Stefan set some very audacious goals. He set a goal of manufacturing 1 billion doses of the vaccine at a time when they had not made a single dose of any product. They were a small biotech. And at the same time, he set that goal, and yet he was there. The question he asked his head of manufacturing was, how can I support you to make 1 billion doses? So he was always willing to roll up his sleeves, bring the right expertise, do what it takes, be collaborative, and make it clear that like we are in this together. It's not like I've set a goal for you and then like, I run away from the field. So a lot of these leaders, we saw an incredible ability to be there, be engaged, be problem solvers, be challengers, and yet be able to attract great people, empower them, allow them to make mistakes at some points, and unleash their full potential. So that's definitely one big theme as I'm hearing you talk about Mr. Narayanan and what we saw in many of the leaders that we studied as well, Atul.
That's terrific. The other one I picked up from your book a lot, and I'd like to hear from you, is about vulnerability. You want to just talk about that, and then I can come in with a rejoinder or example of what I witnessed in Mr. Narayanan's work.
Happy to. And there are two close cousins that we describe in the book, vulnerability and resilience. I feel like in today's day and age, resilience is so important, both at a personal level and then at an institutional level. But I'll start with vulnerability. I think the many stories of vulnerability that we have. One of the stories I want to bring out is that of Claire Babineau-Fontenot, who's the CEO of Feeding America. Again, I'll go back to the pandemic. And on the one hand, Claire was able to set a very audacious goal. She expected all the people, there are 200 food banks all across America. She realized that 50 million Americans were food insecure, much more than what the world understood. Frankly, that some of that problem still continues, even in a developed country like America. It's sometimes there's 14 million kids who are food insecure in the US. And so Claire set some very tough expectations for her team to be there, be with the people that they were serving. And at the same time, in the right setting, with the right people, she was extremely vulnerable on questions for which she did not have the answer. How to design a supply chain that serves 50 million people, how to bring an experience for these people where they have less of shame or guilt, but they're actually comfortable accessing food from Feeding America or the food banks that they're part of. So designing an experience was quite important to be able to provide access to the right set of people. And these questions, she would be very, very open and not feel shy in the right setting, with the right people, with the right team, at the right time. So, we don't talk about vulnerability when you're in a crisis. You don't want to go in front of thousands of people and say that, you have lots of open questions. But at the same time, if you don't put those questions with your team or with the right set of people, you're not going to be able to have breakthrough answers and innovation. Again, another theme, Atul, I heard you talk about. So that's where we saw vulnerability, and vulnerability, if used rightly in the right setting, can actually be a source of strength, a source of influence. Even I'll go so far as to say a source of power. And that's what we saw, in the leaders that we studied. And this vulnerability then helped these leaders become more resilient, adapt to the changes that were happening, when something like COVID hits, or something like a big change in regulations or geopolitics. We saw an incredible resilience, incredible versatility, another theme that we touch on in the book, both on the emotional side and on the intellectual side, that we saw in these leaders and these institutions, Atul.
Oh, that's a great point. And, I remember as a young brand manager, as brand manager for Pond's cold creams, we had the iconic opal glass jars that suddenly had to be phased out. And we were all obviously very concerned and feeling very threatened in some ways. But Mr. Narayanan was with me. We went into a meeting with our agency, with Alec Padamsi, another brilliant man of the era. And it was in a hotel room. There was just 4 or 5 of us, and identified the issues. There was supply chain issues, manufacturing issues, etc. But the real issue was the consumer perception that the heft is gone. I used to get something that, and how would we overcome that perception of heft? And the answer was plastic packaging with cardboard cartons, and actually it would, turned it into an advantage, turned a crisis into an advantage, which is what leaders typically do. So lots of examples like that. But in the interest of time, I want to move us to some other things that I read in your book. And the micro practices, by the way, are fantastic. All of you should really get this book. And at the back of the book, there's some micro practices, which I love because it's things everyone can implement. But I want to go to, what did you find in terms of blind spots? Where do you think, because every great leader still has some, and what is it that typically, is there a pattern, and is there something we can all as leaders prepare for?
Yeah, I think the biggest blind spot we unearthed, or we saw in the journey of these leaders, is people don't often bring truth to these leaders, and there's a scarcity of truth telling, especially as you get more senior. Nobody wants to come and tell you the truth, and in a weird way, you can actually feel quite lonely, despite leading an organization that has hundreds of thousands of people. We saw the loneliness, and we saw this the lack of truth telling. And so one of the chapters we have in the book is encourage a cadre, a spirit of truth telling in the organization. The story we have is that of a media company CEO. He came from the finance background. He was a very successful CFO, and then was made the CEO. And he describes it quite openly. He was always focused on numbers and holding people accountable to performance. And with that mindset, quite often people didn't come and tell him what was really going on with customers, what were readers saying about the media company audience, what was the audience really telling them. And so he set up a network across the institution, and also he would travel a lot, and had to change his own personality, because he realized that his style, his personality, his presence was actually coming in the way of truth telling. And the more, if he wanted to encourage that truth telling, he had to change his own style to ask more questions. Of course, he still held people accountable to performance, but he would not lead with that. He would lead with much more understanding audience, understanding the employees, and then get to performance afterwards. And that shift allowed him to understand the business a lot more, but also get this culture of truth telling a lot more in the organization. And that ties back to some of the micro practices that we have. Again, like you said, we have lots of them, but one that I like a lot is, as a leader, how can I be the last one to speak? So when I go to a team and a team is solving a problem, if I start by giving my answer first, immediately I'll shut down dialogue and shut down problem solving in the team. If I come in with a spirit of listening, of course, if there's a values issue or something, integrity issue, I need to speak up and call somebody out. Of course, I should do that as a leader. But when the team is genuinely problem solving, understanding the customer, or working through some design issue, how can I be the last one to speak, so that I'm listening to everybody's voices, everybody feels heard. And then, of course, I'm synthesizing. I do, if needed, if the team hasn't been able to come to an answer, I as a leader, I have to set that direction. I might have to be a tiebreaker at some point, but really hold on to my peace and wait till I've heard all the voices. And that then encourages truth telling. At McKinsey, we use the term obligation to dissent, where we expect every person to if they disagree, to speak up. And the only way that will happen is if I, as a leader, encourage that in the team and in the broader system, Atul. That's one micro practice that then ties back this blind spot around lack of truth telling.
And that's a great and a simple one to implement. Every one of us can implement that, even with our own children, right? Listen to them first before giving them our opinion on what needs to be done. But back to the flaw of not taking truth to power, I believe, and I'm going to submit, that represents a lack of character. And that's one of the things that V Narayanan stood for. And, our company slogan was a culture of character and competence. So if you have character, and I've had the fortune of working for people like Ross Perot, character is integrity. It's what you do when no one is watching, right? That's the classic definition of character. So if you are priding yourself of Satyamev Jayate and, truth always, then why would you not speak the truth here? What it really means is there is something missing. So I don't know if that's going out on a limb too far, but I would say when there isn't a truth to power, then there is perhaps lack of character.
No, I agree with you. I think character is a theme that we chose not to make that explicit in the book, but completely agree with you on leading in a culture of character and competence. That resonates a lot with me. Character is a very close cousin of many of the dimensions that we touch on the book as well. And in fact, even after the book, we have just published an article. We call it Creating a Leadership Factory in the 21st Century, where we've learned a lot from the US Navy SEALs and many other institutions, not just in the business world. And even in the book, we have Admiral Eric Olson, who spent 40 years with the US Navy and a lot of these armed forces. I know it's true of the Indian armed forces as well. They are great leadership factories for inculcating leadership skills, and they hold character, and it's a great system to test character, and they've defined it, they've described it, and often you make mistakes. Eric was the operational commander of the Osama bin Laden operation. He was not on the ground, but he was in DC advising the president, and he had to make a decision when the helicopter went down because they had made some mistakes in the calculation of the compound wall. They had to make a decision within a couple of minutes. He had to make his recommendation, and that comes down to all the training. It comes down to his own judgment, his understanding of everybody in the team, and then being able to quickly, even in a hierarchical system, being able to listen to the voices on the ground, what they were saying, and come to a decision very, very quickly. And that absolutely needs character and competence, as you're talking about, and also an ability to judge the character of all the people who are then giving him input to be able to make a call so quickly. And I do think it's a topic, even so many decades later, I think a topic to be studied more, to be researched more, to be understood more, to be learnt more. So very much agree with you, Atul.
I think that's great. And I know we're getting close to the question on our time. But I do want to call out that several of us have a services background. Ramesh is a service officer's son, as am I, and the executive director of MMA is Great Captain Vijay Kumar. So we're all in good company here. And yes, we not to say that the other professions didn't, but these are, as we've just celebrated Republic Day, we need to remember our defense services. With that, we're going to transition quickly. But before we do that, on a selfish note from all Ponds Indians, I want to ask you a question. Of all the alumni organizations in the world, I think McKinsey probably does one of the better jobs. And I don't think you guys are hitting people up for money like Yale and other colleges do. So it's not with an ulterior motive, but you do a great job of binding the alumni together. We are very proud of our Ponds alumni. As you can see, we've done some things. Any advice for us on what we could do, or any things we can learn, or since you were almost a Ponds Indian?
I don't know if I have much to add, but I think it goes back to the sense of purpose. I think what binds the McKinsey alumni are the mission and values of McKinsey now, increasingly the purpose that we have to make a positive difference to the world. And a few practices, we are big in learning orientation, giving feedback to each other, helping each other grow. So part of the reason the alumni come together is they often, in whatever roles that they go to, they tell me they don't get as many opportunities to learn and grow as leaders. So we often create environments where people can learn and grow. It could be learn about content, it could be learn about skills, it could be learning about leadership and being, whatever might be the dimension of learning. So that's one of the big things that, and through that we create a sense of belonging. So going back to what Ponds did very well, if it is a spirit of innovation, spirit of deep listening to consumers and employees, the sense of belonging and camaraderie that that you all have. I've now even seen that in the last hour. So how do you recreate that and bring that that spirit of innovation, ideas, learning, etc.? That's the best way then to keep the community and grow the community over time. And you also want to ask yourself, like, how do you, maybe it's not just a Ponds community, maybe expand to make it a Unilever community, that, or a Hindustan Lever community. That might also then allow you to have the critical mass. Often then that also allows, expansion, as long as the values are broadly aligned and you have similar themes, then that might be another way to keep the community thriving and growing, Atul.
Oh, those are great suggestions. And there is actually a Unilever or a Hindustan Lever thing that we're part of. I was just doing a little bit of sibling rivalry when I was jostling with you. But and with the MMA, and call out to Malingam and Vijay Kumar, who's Captain Vijay Kumar, that they do a number of these sessions, learning. But that's the what, about 30 a month, 45 a month. So it's incredible. But we will now segue to the questions so that we keep on time. You want me to actually ask the questions that have come from the audience? Okay. So I'm just going to, in the order I've received them, and then there may be others online, you said? Okay, here. So the first question to you, Ramesh, is integrity is the foundation on which edifice leadership is built. Sorry. Integrity is the foundation on which edifice leadership is built. Your views on use of yoga in making effective inward journey to build integrity. It's a great question from VK
Yeah,
Swan.
I agree on I think you already touched on character, integrity and character. Absolutely, I think is foundational. I was having conversations with my professor from IIM Ahmedabad, Professor Ashok Korwar, when I was doing an event in Pune a few weeks ago. He was saying that business schools and even the broader management community, probably not enough investment in helping people reflect on their own character, on their own integrity, ethics. These are all topics that often in the curriculum don't get as much attention, but are actually so important to the future. There are many ways of exploring the inner journey and like asking the questions about ourselves. Yoga is definitely broadly defined, not just the physical side, but if I define yoga in the way in which it's meant to be as a way of life, is definitely an entry point that includes diet, exercise, meditation, just a being that can help with the inner exploration. Having a teacher or a guru or a mentor is another way. I was spending some time with Anand Deshpande of Persistent Systems, incredible founder and entrepreneur, and he was talking about lots of different ways of having mentors or gurus that can then inculcate that spirit. And then the last thing I'll say is, you talked about don't waste a crisis. Every time there is an opportunity to learn in a system when there is an issue, that is also a very good time to go back and do a retro, do a learning. What did we learn? Where was the failure point? Both at a personal level and at an institutional level. And how do you do it, whether it's in the family context or the institution, business, work context, that allows us to have that deeper reflection without judgment, without feeling like I'm going to be blamed. And how do you set that up is a third way to deepen learning and integrity. So absolutely important topic and many ways of coming at it, Atul.
Perfect. Thank you. Moving on. The next question is from Ganesh from Alberpate, and he asks, leaders often struggle to balance short-term business performance with long-term cultural and organizational values. What frameworks or principles do you recommend to achieve this balance?
Again, great question. I think it's part of the yin and yang that you described even earlier. And looks like as I hear about Mr. Narayanan, great example. I think in the leaders that we observed, our thesis as McKinsey in the research that we've been doing over the last 25 years, our belief is that health drives performance of institutions. And we use the word health instead of culture because we feel culture is such a loaded word. So we have a definition of health that includes how does an organization get alignment on vision, direction, values. That includes how an organization executes, including accountability, coordination, the kind of capabilities it has. And it includes this concept of renewal, which is if something changes in the outer world, how do you respond? Or like, how do you continuously innovate and come up with new ideas for products, business models, etc. And that the core of all of this is leadership. And so that's our definition of health. And we now have a lot of research that shows that it's the health, it's investing in health, improvement in health that is the biggest predictor of long-term performance. And so what we have seen in these leaders, especially as you get more and more senior, leaders invest disproportionately on health and hold the belief that health drives performance. Now, you will still need to have your team on the field or your sales force or people in the manufacturing line who are driving near-term performance, and you need to have metrics for them. And you cannot take your eye off the ball. Or if you're a retailer, you need to have your daily operations. So that system is quite important. But the role of leaders is to spend enough time on the balcony versus just the dance floor, so that they're able to step back and ask the questions when something is not going right, or when they have a higher aspiration. What are the health metrics that they need to change that can then drive performance in a more sustainable way? That's the role of leadership as we see it. And there is no magic formula. I also am not a big believer in ascribing X% of time on health versus Y% of time on performance. But all I've seen is these leaders, they say Arjuna used to be ambidextrous, right? Like these leaders have that ability to be able to switch between the dance floor and the balcony, or between performance and health, and have the dialogue in the right setting with the right team to be able to tackle both at the same time. That's what we've observed, and some of which we've described in the book as well, Atul.
That's a great response. Basically, modulate between the dance floor and the balcony. So that's great. Thank you. Next question says, having worked on organizational transformation across industries, what are the biggest leadership challenges in managing change, and how can leaders overcome them? So this is about, change, which we haven't spoken about. So it's a good opportunity.
Again, a fantastic question. I think if there's one thing that is constant in the world, it's change. I already touched on geopolitics, technology, climate change. I'll add remote working, the Gen Z and the expectations they have, the demographic changes. All of these are all changes that any business is going to be impacted by them. I think at an individual leader level, the key is to manage my own energy through this change. We say manage energy more than managing time. And that gets to physical energy, intellectual energy, emotional energy, spiritual energy. And often I see change fatigue, both at the individual level and at the institutional level. So really reflecting on my own energy, how much energy do I have to be able to deal with the change, respond to the change, come up with innovative ideas. That to me is the biggest unlock I've seen at the leadership and the individual level. And once I'm clear on that, I think at the institutional level, we talk about driving change, embedding culture. We use the example of Frank D'Souza from Cognizant, again, a leader that Chennai knows quite well with all the operations and success they've had. Frank talks about the use of rituals, legends, and stories in driving change in an institution. So, what kind of practices do you want to have, and how do you put that in place? How do you create legends that then anchor the kind of change that you want to see? And there is no end to storytelling. I feel like one of the big skills that leaders need to learn, especially to drive change, is to be able to turn whatever change you're trying to bring about into a simple story, an effective story that people can understand. Frank used to talk a lot about his own client partners. He wanted them to really listen to their customers and make the customers happy. And his belief was, if you do that, you will automatically drive growth, and margins, all of that will come. And so how do you then turn that into stories, examples where people did that in the right way? And the more you do that, you can then drive change at the institutional level. So my advice to change leaders would be, start from within, ask yourself how you're going to sustain your energy, and then use rituals, legends, stories to drive the change.
I love that. Basically, make energy the currency, not time.
Correct.
And that's a great takeaway. I think everyone can kind of relate to that. I'm going to skip over some of the questions that we've covered, like blind spot. There's another one on, when there's transitions like mergers, acquisitions, and more uncertainty. And I guess it's the same, use energy and manage the change. I'm going to try and keep us on time. And there's a couple of questions that are addressed to me. I'm happy to stay on. I want to first deal with the ones on Ramesh's time. And so based, no, these are again, I have questions. I might have to be here for another hour, Captain. But here's one for you that's, or I guess it's a common one. It says, with AI and digital transformations, what strategies do you recommend for leaders to foster a culture of continuous improvement? So I think this is, trying to leverage what's obviously very topical today. So any thoughts on that, Ramesh?
No, absolutely. I'm a computer science engineer by background, and over time, I was more excited about observing, understanding people, and I moved, much more towards leadership, human-centric leadership. That's what I've been doing my own research and work. Having said that, as over the last year and a half, I've actually come back to studying the impact of AI, Gen AI on leadership, on human behavior. My own belief is that the long-term change is going to be massive. I think you as a leader, you have to understand how AI is disrupting your own business. I was with a healthcare leader for dinner last night. I was asking her, where is it that she sees the biggest disruption, and how can she dig into a few experiments and learn, even as somebody who spent 25 years in healthcare, how can she understand the use of AI and get very granular about it, so that she can drive the most impact for her patients, for her institution, in driving productivity, in driving effectiveness, we were brainstorming lots of use cases. At the same time, I don't think the role of the human in the loop is not going away. There's so much back to the integrity, character, ethics, bias, the judgment that is needed as and the governance mechanisms that I need to put in place in an institution. Those are more important than ever before. So as a leader, I need to understand what's the role of the human in the loop in driving the best experience, and the role of the human in the loop in removing bias and making the right judgment at the institutional level, and learning as well. So that, this is one area where I actually think senior leaders can learn more from the frontline or people who are entering the workforce more recently. They tend to be much more flexible with the use of technology, and how can I learn from them and still apply the judgment to pick the right use cases that can then have the most impact. I also see many organizations doing lots of pilots, but not having the courage to then pick a few areas where they can then disproportionately invest and bring the maximum impact. So this is another area where it's useful to make some choices on where is the just the bubble and unclear impact, where is it that you can truly get the most value, and have the courage to truly invest behind those areas. Atul, that's at least what we are observing and learning, frankly, as we're working with leaders to use AI, to use technology to have the most impact.
That's a great question to wrap with. And what you said, it brings us back to where we began. This could be a way to inculcate some humility, right? Learn from the people who know, and they may be the bottom of the rung, but they're smarter than us.
That's absolutely right. I wanted to leave people back with the idea of human-centric leadership. At this lecture with Mr. Narayanan, who is such a role model for all of us. Thank you again for inviting me, and remind people of this idea of inside out leadership, of what is my purpose, who am I, what gives me energy, and how do I use that to inspire teams and inspire change in the world. And maybe I'll again leave with a quote from Rumi, who said that, I came into the world thinking I want to change the world. And as I became older and wiser, I realized that the only person I can change is myself. And change starts from within. I'll leave people with that thought, Atul.
Brilliant. And to everyone listening online and here, I really recommend this book. It's a fantastic read. And as you've heard from Ramesh, it'll leave many thoughts inside each of you. Ramesh, thank you so much. Have a wonderful Friday and the weekend ahead, but appreciate your making the time. We're all
Thank
great.
you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. We are missing you in Chennai. When next time when you come, we look forward to receiving you at MMA. But not to think, we got a digital memento made for you. Can I have a digital memento for you, please? What we gave on your behalf, we give to poor children studying in the school for spending your valuable time and come and address. We really appreciate it. As a gesture, that's what you're going to do. Thank you so much for joining us. And may I request Mr. Atul to please step forward. Mali, can you please step on President Memento to Mr. Atul? It's all the CSR work done by children. We do a lot of work at the school and also a book published by MMA.
This is the work that MMA does. That's excellent. Thank you. Come. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh, for joining us. There's so many of your friends from your batchmates, seniors, are remembering you. Maybe next time when you come, we'd love to host you at MMA. Thank you so much, sir. And McKinsey
Thank
is
you
all
very much.
for all our Thanks a lot. Bye-bye and good morning.